Let's take a look at what the Realflare implementation for Nuke could look like. First, we'll just drop down a gizmo and we'll open up the Realflare application. This brings up the standalone application inside Nuke. It doesn't matter where you run it. When you open up an empty project, we'll first get an error saying that we don't have a lens model selected. So let's select the Nikon 50 to 135 millimeter, and that just gives us a really bright image. If we expose down, we can kind of see what's going on. So the first thing we want to do, let's just adjust our render to something more realistic. 512 by 256. It's super low res, but we'll be able to get a fast feedback. Next, we'll add our grip subdivision, increase those a little bit, and this gives us a little bit better resolution on all of that. Then what we can do next is we can simulate more wavelength so we get some color in it. However, nothing is happening right now. This is because we also have to specify the glass make on all of this. So let's go to glass and set this to shot. And now what we should get is we get some diffraction on all of this. However, you can see the layers are pretty separated. So the red, the yellow, green, blue, they're all separated. We can fix this by adding some substeps over here. Boom. And now we have a nice gradient. Next, we want to add some anti-reflective coatings. For now, we'll just hit randomize on these coatings, and that just adds a random wavelength that each coating is optimized for. So this means the first element is optimized for wavelength 547. This gives us something to look at. We can just hit randomize until maybe we get something that we like, or we can adjust the range if you want something cooler or warmer out of this, depending on what we're looking for. Next, these edges, these sharp kind of like artifacts, we can get rid of this by increasing our minimum area a little bit. It decreases the Fresnel effect on all of this. So let's look at this texture that we're using here, and we could just make a new viewer and look at the ghost. Maybe we'll look at the ghost aperture, and we can bring this up. So right now we're using a hexagon. We'll increase the resolution of that just a bit, of our bokeh shape, I guess you could also call it. And we'll add a little bit of softness to this. Next, we can go down to the ghost and add some ringing. And that just adds a little bit of this nice like texture around the edges. So we're pretty happy with this for now. We can always come back to it. And the next step is we might want to add the starburst. We want to take a look at the starburst. I'm just going to put it here in the center and go to my starburst aperture. So now I have the no, I don't want to go to the flare starburst aperture. We have the starburst aperture here and the starburst here. And then we can bring up the starburst aperture. So we have our blades 6. That's good that it matches the aperture, because then we get the 6 spikes. I'm just going to increase the resolution of this on the left here a little bit. We can go 124 by 124 for now. And I'm going to increase the samples just because I know we're going to probably want more. Next up, let's look at the starburst aperture for the left and the starburst settings on the right. We can increase our intensity, and this just kind of makes the whole thing brighter. We can maybe add some dust. And as you can see, this just introduces these little dots on the left. Maybe we can decrease them, and you can see this kind of adds like this ringing pattern with the rainbow around it. But it's quite sharp, even though this is a really low res image. I can already tell it's a little bit sharp, so we can add a little bit of blur, just a tiny bit of blur to soften that up. Maybe that's a little bit too much, zero point 0.2, zero point 0.5, something like that. If we increase this a lot, like a lot, we'll eventually see that there's a rectangle edge. To get rid of that, we can set this to vignetting and it kind of creates a round shape. So if we go back down in the intensity, we get we make sure that we never get a square artifact around it. So let's leave this like this for now, our starburst pattern. Actually, the last thing we can add is a little bit of parallax. So this will actually move the dust particles on the left, as you can see. It moves them as I move my glint on the right on the sensor. This simulates that the dust might be at a different layer on the sensor than where the aperture is. And that kind of moves these artifacts that get created here, these rainbow artifacts, that moves it as the glint is moving across the sensor plane. Cool. So we're pretty happy with that. We can close this viewer here and add the flares plus starbursts together. Maybe we can increase this a little bit and go, actually we're quite low here, so I'll decrease the overall light intensity to 0.1 and then I'll leave this at like 10 for now. Lastly, what we can do is we can kind of crank the subdivisions here to get rid of some of these artifacts, but for now I'm just gonna leave it and I'll save this as in the demo folder here as demo. It's safe, and then I'll close this, and then all I need to do here is go to my demo folder, pick this project, and now we can set a little bit of an animation. Maybe we can key this position tab here. No, that's not what I wanted, just this and this. And then we can go to frame 10, bring this down here, and just make a little bit of an animation like this. And then we need to set an output path. We'll put this here, name this render.%04g.exr. Color space ACES, ACESCG is good. We want to render flare plus starburst together on split layers, so we'll have it available as multiple layers. Then we'll only render frame 1 to 10. I'll render this. This should open up this terminal where we can see the progress, and then we'll come back when this is done. Alright, the rendering has stopped, and now we can hit our reload button here, and that should load our image sequence. And now we have our flare that is animating on our animation. It's the resolution or the quality settings are not great. You can see a lot of artifacts, but it was really fast. We got a fast preview. We can always crank them later. Those files exist in this render folder. Let me just change the view here. Go to details, and you can see render.flare and render.starburst. Right now they're rendered separately, but you have access to them like this in the layers now, which is nice. And this means if we want to shuffle out the starburst and maybe add an exponential, or maybe we'll do that later. Maybe we'll just grade that separately, and then we add a different shuffle for the flare, and then we can plus these together again after the fact, and that way we can grade our glint a little bit purple to match, just a little bit warmer purple. Not sure what we're doing here, right? And then we can maybe add an exponential glow on top of it all. Maybe something like this. Maybe we'll grade this down a tiny bit. And that's how we can use Realflare in Nuke. We can also render out these starburst patterns separately. We can totally use these in convolves. You can create interesting halation setups with just rendering different starburst patterns out. So there's a lot of different uses how we can use all of this.